And welcome back to the channel here on the Shuffle Squad. We are going to be talking about a lot of new things, a lot of older things. We're going to be talking about all the Pokemon TCG stuff that you want to know if you're going to start playing either online or in person coming up and gearing into the new season, or if you're going to be going to the World Championships. Everything's going to be here on this Meta Forecast covered for you, so you're going to want to stick around for that. We are going to be joined here by the lovely KingDreC1out over on the other side. Dre, how's it going?
How's it going, everybody? How you doing, PJ? KingDreC1out, Dreoxys, all that good stuff. Good to be on another episode.
Yeah,
Ready to talk some meta, some
yeah. It's
future
been too long.
cards.
We're getting bored here, Dre. I mean, I'm getting bored. I've been picking up some GLC at this point. We're ramping up for some cups in July. Getting shuffle all ready for Worlds. That's kind of where
Yep.
my head's at. I know that you're gearing up yourself for Worlds. Props to you and the team getting their Worlds invites pretty early
Thank you.
on, and we're excited for you. So let's talk about Pokemon. We came here for Pokemon. We're not going to chat and talk about the summer weather that's killing me outside. We're going to be talking about some of the online meta, because I know that there's a lot of online tournaments. Again, people are gearing up for Worlds. They still want to play this format. So what's good, what's not good? Let's talk about that. So the
Yep.
first thing I want to do, we're going to head over to play.limitless TCG. That's where we get a lot of our online results from. A great resource. So shout out to them too. We're going to talk about these conversion decks. So the first page we're looking at here is just the conversion rates for all of the decks that you'll see in these online events. Obviously, we can see the top 8 decks here, and we're going to list those through, is Raging Ball Ogerpon, Gardevoir EX, we've got Lugia VSTAR with Archeops, Dragapult, and I'm sure that there's quite a few different Dragapult lists that we can take a look at. Lost Zone Box. There is Other, which is an undefined deck. Then we have Charizard with Pidgeot EX, and then Dragapult Lost Zone Box, and honorable mention, we do have Regidrago VSTAR box in here too. So I do have to bring that up because it is a deck that seems like a lot of content creators are branching onto. I know, prior to NAIC, I was adapting to it, and it's what I would have played probably if I went. But Regidrago is a cool deck. So Dre, talk to me a little bit about what we see in this top 8. What are your thoughts on here?
Yeah, I mean, for like online tournaments, most of them are best of one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of like doesn't surprise me that Raging Bolt is number one. Like going into this Cup and Challenge season as it kicks off, like I'd probably take Raging Bolt Ogerpon because with these best of ones, like you just want to make sure you get to play the game. And Raging Bolt, it's like it's rare that you don't get to play. Like
Yeah.
Ogerpon draws cards, you draw into Nest Ball into Squawk into everything. Like it's like the deck just works, right? And so
Right.
in these best of ones, it makes sense that it's number one. But number two being Guardy, also no surprise. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if Guardy was number one because I mean, so powerful, so strong. It was my pick for NAIC. Got day 2 with it.
Right.
A few players on TSS decided to take Guardy and had success with it. And then it ended up placing second, and it was like 6 of the top 8, right? Like it was
Right.
nuts.
Yeah.
So these
It was a
strong,
Guardy
like these
World.
strongest deck.
In Guardy
Yeah,
World, we're just living in it right now. So
exactly.
I definitely would agree with you. Again, we have to think of this. It's not a regional. It's not a major. These are online events that are played, one, in best of one format. So you want to be as consistent and aggressive as possible. And two, they're played on PTCG Live, which we all know, right now, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but, PTCG Live has got some issues, but you want to play something that's the most consistent, you're going to get the most out of. Now, Gardevoir is a little bit more technical to play than something like Raging Bolt. And obviously, you do have the hiccups with Lugia. So I can see, all 3 of the decks at the top 3 here converting. What's surprising to me, I think, is the amount of Dragapult that we still see, even though it didn't perform at NAIC. I think people are trying to experiment a little bit more with how that deck does. I mean, we didn't see it in the top 8. It was, barely in top 32 here, for NAIC, which is the biggest North American tournament ever. So with Dragapult being hyped up Dre, what are your thoughts on Dragapult now after we saw what came out of NAIC?
I think Dragapult. I mean, I think our whole format is just very, very under like developed. Like
Yeah.
we had one major and then that's it. Then we're gonna have another set going into World. So this meta, we only got one major out of it. So it just feels so untapped. Like there's just so much potential for stuff that hasn't been like reached yet. And I think that's what's going on online is that these online tournaments, people are like still trying to cook. Like, and I think
Yeah.
they should. Like, I think there probably are like a variety of things that have not been like discovered. Um, like if we had another tournament, I probably would have dipped my toes into like some Charizard Dragapult. Honestly, like I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty strong. I so I don't. It doesn't surprise me too much that people are still cooking with Dragapult. Charizard being like number 7 is kind of surprising because nobody really played it to NAIC either.
Yeah. It was
But
really
like
hyped
even
up. Like
yeah,
it was really hyped going into NAIC. People were gonna sleeve it back up again, you know?
it's still good. Like it's still it's hard to call it the best deck in the format, but I feel like when it's a deck that you can just confidently take it and just be like, yeah, nope, I don't care what I hit, I'm just gonna win. It does not no worry. If I hit what Snorlax, okay, sure, one bad matchup. Everything
Right.
else, it's like 50-50, right? And I think like
Exactly.
it's almost in like the same thing that Tino was in, right? Like Tino was like a super like middle of the pack, like in almost every matchup, and that's what made it good because better players
Yeah.
could pick it up and just like outperform people. I think Charizard's kind of in that kind of like same stable right now where a good player can pick up Charizard, go into a bunch of 50-50s and win just out by skill diffing.
Yeah, and if you don't know, if you're watching this Metaforecast and you don't know what skill diffing is, if you take a deck that's not necessarily the best performing deck and you're just playing it because you know every single matchup, you know how your cards are working, you're going to have more skill behind the deck and therefore convert better because you're knowing how to play to your outs and you're also knowing how to pivot within the deck itself to learn what to do and what not to do to make the deck actually perform, which is not something that everybody has the ability to do, or maybe you haven't spent enough time on the deck. Maybe it's not your favorite deck. Charizard might not be your favorite deck. You might think of it as a brain dead deck, but there's obviously a lot of good plays. And I think the same thing holds true for Dragapult. I mean, we even saw somebody like Tord, who is a master deck builder. Tord's deck has been talked about a lot online. I've seen discourse through, Twitter or X and some Facebook, inklings here of how that deck should be really, really good. And I do think that there's a lot of merit to splashing in a Dragapult in the Charizard deck or just Charizard being a really top performer. I think that, we'll kind of touch base on that later on when we're talking through this video, how Charizard will start to perform a little bit better as we get closer and closer to the end of this format. I know it's sad to say we just started the format, but we're almost at the end again.
Yep.
I think Dragapult has a lot of tricks that people are unexpected. Obviously, Guardy is a super powerful deck, and Charizard can capitalize because it hits for Dark Weakness into a 2-prize Pokemon. Not everybody can, play that strongly. It has outs to things like Unfair Stamp. There's so many different routes that you can take, and not every deck has that, right? I could play against a, Monkey Dory with Frostless deck, and they just don't have the answers to an Unfair Stamp. They don't
Right.
have the answers to bench sniping over and over again and things like that, where Charizard does, and Dragapult does have that. We have these engines that are built to draw more cards in the deck, and I really think that that's the focus. Is if you're not drawing cards, there's something that's possibly wrong with your deck.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing some sort of control deck and you don't need to draw that many cards because you're cherry picking them, that's a different story and it's a different type of play style. But, if Raging Bolt didn't draw as many cards as it did every turn and you didn't have a draw engine, it would be a bad deck, right? We saw the same thing kind of with Roaring Moon. In the last format, we had to get the deck moving faster. We saw Ross Cawthon, another great deck builder, putting more Professor's Research in than Sada, right? And that was the thing that got the deck to flow, is seeing more cards. Pokemon TCG is a game that you don't have to rely on the top deck like a lot of other TCG games are. You get to see the majority of your deck. Most of the cards there's draw supporters for a reason. There's more draw supporters than there aren't draw supporters in TCG for Pokemon. And I think that holds true with a lot of these decks. Look at Lugia. And I want to pause a little bit. I think that Lugia is definitely still an underrated deck in this format. Alex Szymanski, one of our own, was trying to innovate that with his group. Kind of brought my ideas to the forefront too that I was having behind the scenes before even talking to Alex, where we took the Cincino right out. And I remember talking to Jeremy or Jem Gamilla on TSS going into NAIC that I had a really great list that didn't play any Cincinos, and he just didn't believe it. And then, here comes Alex playing the double Iron Hands, playing the Wellspring Ogerpon in there too. I even think Cornerstone Ogerpon probably belongs in the deck. I think maybe a Roseanne's backup is really cool. And I know a lot of people aren't believers in Roseanne's backup. I could be just yapping here, but I really like the versatility of having the legacy energy back, even if it's not giving you that out to, not giving away an extra prize. You're still being able to attack. Maybe it is Cornerstone Ogerpon. They can't hit through the thing anymore. You've already, made your 2 prizer or a 1 prizer. You don't even care. You're just slamming through stuff. Maybe the Cincino engine or the Cincino attacking line is too clunky for the deck to draw more cards. And that's kind of where my mindset is. So what do you think about Lugia now? I know we've kind of talked about Gardevoir, how powerful it is. We've talked about Ogerpon, how powerful and aggressive. And we've obviously gone over a couple other ones. What are your personal thoughts, Dre, on Lugia?
I like Lugia. I mean, I played Lugia a couple times this season and day 2'd with it. I've won a couple cups with it. Like the colorless variant. I mean, the newer version is just like a stronger colorless version.
Yeah.
It's funny because leading up to NAIC on my stream, I was building like a Lugia list, and I was wondering, I'm like, why don't we play the deer? Like,
yeah,
I feel like the deer's still good. Like, if we have a lot of energy in play, or we can't set up like against Dragapult, we can't get a rat set up because they're sniping it. Like, why don't we just play the deer? So it's kind of funny that the deer brought its way back in, because I was kind of having like the similar thought process. I just couldn't pull the trigger on playing Lugia to NAIC.
Right.
No regrets,
Yeah. Guardy is Guardy. It's a great deck. We had solid lists going into NAIC, so why wouldn't you? If we knew how to beat Lugia pretty heavy-handedly, we knew that a lot of people weren't playing an optimized list either. So
exactly. And so I don't think I hit any Lugias playing the Drapion.
Right.
Maybe. I mean, I think I hit Liam, but I'm not sure if he played the Drapion. I know he played like Double Bear. He beat me with Lugia. But yeah, I think all the other Lugias I faced were like pretty like standard with the hands legacy, no double hands, no electric energy, or no Drapion. So most of those matchups were pretty decent. Yeah, I think Lugia is still like plenty strong, especially if we're going into this challenging. Like that's pretty much where I have to like focus our attention, like for the rest of this meta, because like this is just gonna be our cup challenge meta for the next few weeks until Worlds. Like
exactly.
So like as cups and challenges come back in here in a couple weeks, like Lugia is a fine play because you only need the deck to work once every game. You don't need to win 2 out of 3 until you hit top cut. So Lugia's fine. I mean, you don't need it to work for 15 rounds. You only need it to work for like maybe 6.
Yeah.
And then top 8. But like it's I think it's still strong. If you sequence, as long as you don't get a completely dead hand and you can sequence properly, you should be okay. I just don't like the amount of games I don't get to play that are out of my control. It's kind of the only thing I dislike about Lugia. And even with the Carmine hasn't done too much to fix it. It's made it a little bit better, but like not enough to like make me feel comfortable and confident in the deck, like always functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that too. And I was a big believer in Carmine myself. I thought Carmine was the best card in the entire deck, so why not put 3 of them in there? Analyzing Szymanski's list a little bit more, I see obviously going down in the Carmine. I think that 2 is acceptable. 1 is fine. You obviously don't want to prize it a lot of games because you want to go fast. You do pick going first the majority of times. And, you want to find that Carmine turn 1. You want to slap down your Luminion to find it. If it's in the prizes, it's a feels bad moment if you're going first. You know, 2 seems like a sweet spot for me, and I think that that's kind of where I'll keep it. But I did like the increase. Again, we're talking about Professor's research in the deck just to make the deck go faster. So that's something that, you know, if you're a Lugia enjoyer, that's something you're going to definitely want to look at, even if you're playing the Cincino build. Bless your soul. You know, keeping on, I guess. But I really want to shift our focus to a deck that nobody really wants to talk about because it's boring in this format. So many people have played it. I really think it's just going to get stomped into the ground come Worlds format. But it's a deck we still have to talk about for Cups and Challenges. It's Lost Box. So Lost Box in general, obviously we have Dragapult Lost Box, but we really don't care about it. Andrew Hedrick won NAIC with a Lost Zone box. It takes a really favorable matchup into a lot of stuff. I've played the deck personally after he won, copied the exact same 60, played it on ladder. The deck is insanely fast. I think that it's honestly the best Lost Box list I've ever played since Lost Box came out. I know Kyogre was a great one. Shout out to you, Kyogre. We'll miss you. You know, as far as that goes, I think that this list is the sauce. If you're going to play Lost Box, honestly, copy the 60 and just go. Dre, do you have any other lists that you really enjoy that you think may be better, maybe worse, maybe my take is too hot here?
I mean, like Andrew Hedrick's a really great player. He came up with he's a great deck builder. The list is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I personally am not a fan of the no dark package. I like the having the moon as
Mm-hmm.
my possibility as like an insta killer. Um, like the thorns, yeah, it can be annoying, but like I feel like if Zard gets more popular, like I was playing Zard and played against the deck, and like it seemed fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not too bad. Um, I don't know. It was just one of those things that when the meta shifts, I think Hedrick's list was perfect for the meta going in.
Right.
Like definitely perfect. Like built exactly to counter the expected meta. With Lugia being number 1 and Guardy being number 2, like it was perfect for that event. It was,
Mm-hmm.
but I think as we like go into the cups and challenges and stuff like that, I think you may want to make some changes unless you just expect everybody in the room to be like a Lugia or a Guardy bot, like 1 and
Right.
2, and you don't really run into anything else. I think it's fine, but like the Raging Bolt matchup doesn't feel great with that
Yeah.
list. And it's kind of weird considering that it should be like one of your best matchups if you're just like a standard Lost Box.
Yeah.
Um, and so that kind of feels funky. But even Guardy doesn't feel that great. Like I'm pretty sure I've ran into a couple while I'm playing Guardy and still beat it. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Hedrick's an insane player. So of course,
Right.
good list in an insane player's hand. He won the whole event. I don't know if I would say it's the best list going forward, though. I do think it was the best deck for the event, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, with that being said, we have to switch gears and talk about a controversial topic here, or controversial. Sorry, my words are leaving me as I want to talk about this so badly. Um, the Ace Spec in Gardevoir. We have to talk about it. We saw the conversion rate. We saw the hyper aroma. I still say unfair stamp is the way to go. Josh Frink will vouch for me as well.
And I vouch as well. I
Okay.
think I played Unfair Stamp in my Guardy at
Mhm.
NAIC, and the amount of games I came back and won because of that A spec was insane.
Yeah.
I went up against a turbo box that got turn 2-7 in the lost zone, double Mirage Gate hands me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to just keep playing. They hands me again. And then I go in, and it was just um it was like counter catcher, Iono, Screamtail KO hands. They
Yep.
were able to like manually retreat and spit. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm gonna. They had a Raikou, they had a Seal Stone earlier in the game, so I bossed Raikou,
Mm-hmm.
unfair stamp, Monkey Door, loaded up my big Guardian, Monkey Door the damage, swing KO Raikou, and now it's 2-1, and you have 2 cards, and
Yep.
all they were able to do was draw, spit, and then I won the game from
Yeah.
there.
The
It was
amount of
pretty. It was
games
pretty
I've
gross.
come back 2 to 6 prize cards with reset or unfair stamp. I keep wanting to call it reset stamp because I love that card. I miss you, reset stamp. Um, but the amount of times that I've come back from a 4 prize difference is crazy. I
Yeah.
do like Hyper Aroma. I'm not going to say it's a bad card, and I don't think it's a bad way to play the deck. But I
Yeah.
will say that I feel like it's not the optimal ace spec. The more and more
I
I
agree
play
with that.
Guardy,
Yeah.
and I'll live and die on this hill. Maybe later on in the meta we won't need the unfair stamp. Maybe we won't need it for Guardy. I still think it's really good if somebody doesn't set up their draw engine. They've got nothing. Miraidon doesn't have a draw engine, so we don't have to worry about that. Uh, Obviously, Ionoing a Raging Bolt Ogerpon towards the end of the game is life changing as
Mm-hmm.
the opposing player. But if you could do that, plus you get your tool card for your Drifloon or your Screamtail, and you get an item card, so maybe you can get your Earthen Vessel to get your Monkey Dory going, all in the same turn. Plus you've got your draw engine. It's so much better.
Yeah.
And I'll take that. I don't have an issue without Hyper Aroma getting my Corellia set up. 9 times out of 10. But there's always variance in games. I would say that that's obviously the way that I will be playing Guardy going forward for sure. But if you're in the comments, definitely let me know your opinions on that. And last topic here, when we're talking about the online conversion rate, we have to talk about it again. I love this deck. Regidrago, what are your thoughts? Just give me your raw thoughts here, Dre. I want to see what
I
you think.
I thought the deck was fun. I
Mm-hmm.
saw the guy. I actually know the guy that needed top 16's locals. He's
Mm,
actually one of my coaching clients,
nice.
and came up to me and they say he was like, "Yo, you need top 16." Got 14, got his invite, and I was like, "Dude, that's so sick." He's like, "Yeah, he did with Regidrago VSTAR." I'm like, "What?" Like that's awesome. It's like insane because
Yeah.
like last year in my first season, I needed top 16 at Fresno to get
Yep.
my invite, and then I just sniped it. So I know that had to be like I was so hyped for bro, like hearing
Yeah.
the story about it, and then so like one of the first streams I did when I came back was like, I got to play his list, like
It's a good
definitely.
list
And then
too. The list
no,
is
it is.
solid.
It was fun. I think it's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing I was like missing, I'm like, dang, I really wish I had like I think I wanted Giratina V Star
Okay, so
or
hear me out. So
Giratina. I
I
wanted like
agree
one of
with you
those.
because in the online meta, there is a lot of times in a tournament you will find yourself on the other side of a stall deck or a
Mm-hmm.
control deck. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Giratina definitely helps, but what I've done instead of putting a two prizer in play, because they can potentially knock it out with Radiant Charizard or so on and so forth, or trap it,
Mm-hmm.
is if you're putting the Koraidon in from Ancient Box, because that also has Shred and it's only a single prize Pokemon. So I did take out
Mm-hmm.
a different card, I think, in my personal list, and I put Koraidon in. Yeah, it hits for 130, but things like Cornerstone Ogerpon. I keep talking about that card, but Cornerstone Ogerpon is a scary card because everything in
Yeah.
your deck has an ability that's
Yep.
going to be attacking. So, I mean, even I guess Mew could potentially go through it and hit that for, if you're loading up a Mew EX, you could do that. But, or you could just shred with the Pokemon that you're meant to be attacking with,
Exactly.
as long as you get it out there. I did originally, before I thought about Koraidon, I did have a Tina V in my list leading up into NAIC, and it's very scary. I had to put things like Turo in the list, and I had to put things like Thornton in the list just to make sure that I would get it out if I did play against a stall deck, which I didn't. It's scary enough that you've got Raging Bolt in the deck. We don't want to make it
Right.
more inconsistent.
Right.
And that's my take on it. But it is a very fun deck. It reminds me of Mewtwo Tag Team GX if you played back then. Because there's so many different options. The deck is super, super fun. Definitely give it a try on PTCG Live, if nothing else, and just to see how you like it. So what we're going to do now, Dre, is we're going to hop over and we're going to talk about some of the more recent tournaments. So we could take a look. There's one from June 18th. We're obviously recording this on the 18th. We've got the Reach for the Stars event here. So we're going to take a look at that first one and see what the top 8 looks like here. Obviously, we have Travis McCoy coming in 601 with Guardy. We had a 6-1 conversion all the way down through the rest of the top 6. and that was again Lugia Ancient Box, which I feel like is a sleeper pick a lot of the time, especially for these cups and challenges coming up.
Right.
We've got another Guardy, Raging Bull, Guardy, Raging Bull, Guardy. You could see the pattern here.
Yeah.
They are converting pretty well, sneaking in with a Lugia here and there, or the random Ancient Box. Shout out to Zach for unlocking the code for Ancient Box. I've played Zach's list. I know we saw Drew Kennett also play a very similar list with the Walking Wake in there too. What do you think about the top 8 that we see here? Are these matching what your thoughts are?
I think this is like pretty like what I would be expecting. Like if Cups and Challenges were to start this weekend, this is kind of what I'd be expecting. Like,
okay,
there's going to be the people that are going to try hard with Guardy. They're going to sweat it out. The Guardy's a good deck, strong deck. You can come back. There'll be the people that are like, you know what, I'm just going to Unga Bunga Lugia. Hope everything goes well. And there's just going to be like, Raging Bolt plays a lot of games.
Yeah.
I might not beat everything, but I'm gonna play every game, which can translate to more wins.
Absolutely.
Which I think, and then Ancient Box is just like the sleeper pick. Like,
yeah.
I think it's in such a good like position in like what I would expect that I might even pick it up for a cup or challenge once or twice. Like, hey, if I expect everyone's just playing Lugia and Guardy, I might just play Ancient Box.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a great matchup into a lot of the big 3 that we see. It's great into Lugia, even with Cincino in there, it's still good. You can smack the 2 prizers towards the end of the game. Usually there's at least a Lugia VSTAR on the field. Guardy, it is scary, I will say. So Guardy with Unfair Stamp is very scary as an Ancient Box player. However, Guardy with Hyper Aroma, not scary at all. So that's another selling point for Unfair Stamp right there. So I would say, everything else, Raging Bolt is pretty free. The thing that you do want to worry about, you got to make sure that the Regidrago players don't get their Noivern in the discard pile, and then you're pretty much fine. But you do have a couple adjusting options, and you play a lot of 2 prizers to get Regidrago to actually work. So it's not awful. I would say that that's probably like a 50-50 matchup depending on the draw of the player.
Right.
So we'll hop back over to that last screen here, and I'm going to go to another larger tournament. This is from the 16, the Redacted Masquerade, number 4. We'll take a look at this top 8. Now, this one's a bit different. We look at these numbers and a little bit longer of a tournament. We've got 2 Dragapults in the top, and then we have a Future Hands box, followed by Lost Box, Charizard, Raging Bolt, a Chen Pao in here. Now, Chen Pao is another deck I know people love. You've been playing it for forever. You know how it works. You skill diff people. Again, we're going to use that term here. But the 2 Dragapults in the top are really what my eye is on. And I'm just going to open up an image of what this deck looks like. Now, this is the Pidgeot version with the Neo Upper Energy, which I still feel is very correct. And if you're going to play Dragapult, this is the way, as they say. So Radiant Charizard in this list over Radiant Kazam, and I think that that's also pretty correct. The TM Devo seems so good here. You don't really have to worry about Charizard as much with doing something like that. You have the Turo. You've got your Mela. This one's playing Roseanne's Research. I'm telling you, that card is buy your full art Roseanne Research now.
Get your Neo Upper Energy back, man.
Exactly. It was $1 a couple weeks ago. So get your Neo Upper Energy. I think this list is very good. So I'm going to pop backwards a bit and take a look at the second placed list and see if that's
pretty close.
I mean, it's pretty similar for what the lists are looking like here. So nothing crazy. Still playing the Radzard. Still playing the Roseanne's backup.
I like the Kieran to fix math.
Yes, Kieran is very good in this. Hitting 220 a lot of the time can just do the trick. And that's sometimes what you need, especially in the way that the meta is shaping up. You might have to hit that 220, and then maybe you're bossing around it and spreading some damage, taking a 4 prize turn in a lot of cases. So something to keep your eye out for. Playing the TM Devo, we've got the Defiance Band here, and then the Jamming Tower, which I really like in this list. I think I might like it over the Collapse Stadium in a lot. Guardy's huge, right? We know Guardy's
Yeah.
huge. You throw it on a jamming tower, you take a prize. And, you
I've been
know,
favoring Jamming Tower in a lot of things. I was
yeah,
playing Charizard on stream
yeah,
last night, and I liked Jamming Tower
yeah,
over like
yeah.
Collapse.
Collapse is cool. Don't get me wrong, but you do play Turo. This list also plays Palpad, so you can cycle back your Professor Turo and pick up your two prize liabilities like Gluminion and Rotom V, or even pulling up your hurt Dragapult or Pidgeot EX. You know, you get them
Yeah.
off the field. You don't care. You know, most of the time, everything's not going to have energy on it, so you're good to go. You're ready to start swinging as long as you get yourself loaded up. So it's interesting to see the duality here between something that's a standard meta tournament and then a little bit off meta, where Dragapult's doing a little bit better. I think that may have something to do with maybe the amount of rounds that we're seeing, and maybe, you know, if somebody wanted to try something different, maybe the Guardies aren't drawing so hot, or time of day, so on and so forth. I know the late night's coming up. You know, it probably happened after this episode's airing, but you can always go back and check out the late night. But what would you say the biggest difference for you on, or why there's such a difference between the two tournaments? You know, only a few days apart, but vastly different top eights, Stray.
I mean, our like this meta is huge, like wide open, like as far as like what's like playable.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everything is kind of like in right now we're in a very like I don't want to say rock paper scissors because it doesn't feel rock paper scissors because there's so many options. I think it's more like more so checks and balances. It
Yeah.
feels like there's not just one deck that's being allowed to run rampant because there's some other deck that checks it.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, like that's why we see these like multi tournaments that just have like 1-2 days apart, but still like vastly different like top eights. And it's just simply because like I think like even if we look at like okay the masquerades like in total meta game like 11% Guardy, 5% uh Raging Bull Ogerpon, and then we can like just go back to the other one and then
Yeah.
just see like the tournament. It's like almost the exact same as far as that goes. So it's just like it's insane. But I think it's because our meta is in a very healthy place.
Yes.
And everything is just like very like checks and balances. Like nothing's just being allowed to be like the S tier deck that we all assume Dragapult would be.
Exactly. And I do like that because, you know, nobody really wants to play in an S tier meta or a tier 0 meta, if you will, just because it gets boring over time. Obviously, we're not going to stick in this meta too long, but it's nice to see all of these decks be really good decks. So somebody could pick up, you know, their favorite Pokemon, or a deck that they really like, and it's still really good, whether it's the best deck in the format or an okay deck in the format. It still can do well and perform well, and you can learn how to play the game if you're a newer player, or you can try different things if you're a seasoned player. It's just a great place for Pokemon TCG. I've been playing the game, you know, I played base through Neo, stopped, came back Sun and Moon. You know, we got Zoroark GX right after, and that was kind of like a tier 0 format. Everybody was playing Zoroark. And, you know, that was out of the Buzzrock, you know, meta beforehand. All of these decks are just like dominating. We had ADP, which made people want to quit the game. We had all of these other formats that came in between, and it's just you get 2 months into it and you're like, oh, I just can't wait for the new set to come out. But this set has been so amazing for Twilight Masquerade, um, making a lot of older decks better, making the newer decks great, and they just all blend together, and it's just a great melting pot. And I'm excited to see what happens with Worlds when we get Shrouded Fable and convert to that type of meta and what that's going to do for us. So we're going to kind of pump the brakes on the current meta and the online format, and then switch gears to potential Worlds format and take a look over in Japan and see what they're doing. Now, before we do get there, I do want to give a special shout out to all of our sponsors who help make this meta forecast possible. Shout out to Kayfabe Cards. where you can check out the link down in the description of this video, and you can go over to their TCG Player store and view all of their singles. They are normally at the major events in North America, and you can buy singles from them. But shout out to them. Leave them some love on their social media too. Go and check out their Instagram. They've got a lovely Instagram and TikTok. So shout out to Kayfabe. Shout out to Ultimate Guard, who helps us with all of our sleeve needs and card deck box needs, our binder needs, things like that. They are awesome. If you haven't used Katana sleeves, you need to get yourself a pack and check those guys out. And we would love to hear back on what you think of Katana sleeves. And last but not least, Advanced GG, helping fuel our days. They have awesome products. They have a focus powder, which is really good. They just came out with a matcha powder too, which is really good. I love matcha flavor. And they have really cool shakers and ice shakers and desk mats, so on and so forth. So you're going to want to check that out. And you can save some money on some of their higher end product using code TSSWIN. So you're going to want to do that too. So enough about our sponsors, because you can do the homework yourself and check out all those links down in the description below. But we're going to hop over to Japan and take a look. So what we're doing right now is we're going to go back about a week or so and take a look at the City League, which is basically how Japan runs their cup circuit. Now they're still in the newer meta, but they have the newer cards. So this is a 2-page way that we're going to look at it. So we have page 1 and page 2. So we're going to first look at page 1, and this is the summary of a bunch of different leagues. So we'll try to scroll through. The first one we show the top 8 lists here that start with Dragapult. We've got Dragapult. We've got Lost Zone Box, Dragapult, Lost Zone Tina, Dragapult, and then Greninja EX to round out the top 8. So, not surprising that Japan has some wacky decks at some of their cups. I'm sure that you too, depending on how big your cup size is and how many, world chasing players that you're going to have there, on how many wacky decks that you'll see. But I really do see where this cup is dominated by Dragapult, and people in Japan are not playing the Pidgeot engine, which is kind of strange to me. They're playing the Xatu engine. From what I can see from these pictures, Xatu, if you didn't know, does put a psychic energy from your hand onto one of your bench Pokemon, and you get to draw 2 cards from doing that. Now, it's not the best draw engine. You're not cherry picking through your deck. It is a way of drawing cards. You're going to rely on your Dracloaks to start to see more cards so you can see more of your deck. It basically is playing like Guardy, but on slow mode, where you're not ramping up damage as fast, but you're just an aggressive deck that's spreading damage around the board. Now, I don't prefer this type of list, and I can see obviously in the way that the meta shapes for the rest of the top 16, it's probably a little bit better in their specific store meta. We're going to go down to the next store and take a look. Now there's Luxray, who won the whole thing. Luxray EX, which is kind of wild, but it's more or less a Miraidon deck with just Luxray. It's
like 2 control decks.
Yeah. So you got your control Miraidon, which I never thought I'd say in the same sentence, but you got that. You do have a Snorlax stall list that seem to be doing pretty well. We see some Charizard coming back in here. We've got Lost Zone again, still saying prevalent in the top 8 at a different store. We'll kind of scroll through the next one here. We've got Lost Box winning. Well, this is Lost Tina, I'm sorry. So Lost Zone Tina, now adding the Blood Moon Ursaluna into the list. We've got Temple of Sinnohs to help combat Lugia. So many different things that we see in Tina coming back. And I think that that's in part with Charizard getting a little bit better going into the next meta. So a lot of cool things. Now, this is, again, shaping up for a Worlds meta, so these aren't necessarily Worlds decks yet, but they are getting ready to play some of those cards. So we've got this page here, and we'll keep scrolling down. It's a lot of the same decks over and over again. You get those 1 or 2 wacky decks in here. I do see an Ancient Box with the big Roaring Moon EX kind of towards the bottom. Not a whole lot of Raging Bolt Ogerpon anymore. As we can see, those bigger decks, the stage 2 decks, are starting to dominate a little bit more in this meta. You don't care if you give up 1 prize card, because then you're taking 2, 4, 6 throughout the game. If we're flipping over to page 2, we see a different meta at this first store. We see Lugia dominating, and Lugia with Cincino package. We've got Snorlax stall. Obviously, Lugia bodies Snorlax stall most of the
Yeah.
time. Unfortunately, with a 4-jet energy, so on and so forth. You've even got the Flutter Mane in Lugia list, which I'm a huge believer of. I think that card is so good in Lugia, and if you aren't playing it in your Lugia list, you should. And then more Xatu Dragapult, which is
Yeah.
just wild to me. No
It's
Nero
very interesting.
upper energy to be seen anywhere you can put your binoculars on. It's not there. Um, just going down, all I'm seeing, I got Snorlax, I got Charizard, I got Miraidon. Not a whole lot of Guardy either, which is kind of crazy. Every so often you'll
Yeah.
see Guardy pop up, but I know I'm kind of scrolling a little fast here. But there's not a whole lot happening for Guardy in the top tables. We get to one store that's basically outside of Tokyo, and that one's got 2 Guardies in top 8, but Dragapult still wins. Now this is Dragapult with Pidgeot is beating,
Yeah.
in the top 8, beating a Greninja, beating 2 Gardevoirs. You got Lost Tina and Lugia in that top 8 too. So Dre, just a snapshot here of what we're looking at, how the meta's adapting in Japan, getting ready for the Worlds format. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, it is very interesting, especially the Dragapult being mainly with the almost dominantly. It's just dominantly with the Xatu engine.
Right.
I mean, it is really awkward when I play against Dragapults. I don't get like a turn 1 attachment.
Mm-hmm.
It is really awkward for them because they have to rely on that Neo upper, and you don't want to have to rely on that early game. So I think like the Xatu does kind of make sense in that aspect. Like you're advancing energy and you're drawing, and then your attachment for turn is the fire energy if you can get to it. Or if you whiff, at least you're not like 2 turns behind now, because you can use the ability and manually attach in the same turn
Right.
if you need to, or if they gust 1 Dracloak with the energy, like you're not like toast.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of like times against like Pidgey, Dragapult where I'm like, okay, well you only got 1 energy put down and you're not set up well. I'm going to KO that, and you're not going to be able to quick search for upper and Candy Pult probably. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I really did not expect there to be so little Guardy. Maybe I guess they just don't
Yeah.
like Guardy as much in Japan. I don't know. Best of 1 is not like the best time to play Guardy either, though.
Yeah.
Like you really, because if you have a bad setup, you want to be able to just scoop game 2. And so yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
Sometimes I can kind of see the lack of Guardy. What is really interesting is also the lack of Raging Bolt.
Yes.
A whole lot of Tina, but because we see so much Dragapult and Zard, I know Tina has a favorable matchup with Zard. I'm not sure how the Dragapult matchup is, but I would have to assume with Star Requiem, it has to be pretty decent into
Yeah.
Dragapult.
And that's the thing too. I think that Sableye not being countered in the Japanese meta, and obviously if we take a look at NAIC, there was not a whole lot of Jirachi. People must have thrown their Jirachis away. But
Right.
Sableye can just run rampant in this format too. We see, if we're looking at that top 8 for online metas going backwards there, we saw Lost Zone Dragapult was its own archetype in the top 8 for conversions too. That says something, Lost Zone Box, Tina, all of these decks that are spreading damage, and there's nothing that your opponent can really do about it. That's not a great world for Guardy to live in.
Nope.
So that's where my head's at. Maybe the Iron Hands isn't what's really pigeonholing Guardy from being a top deck in Japan. My thoughts are, spread decks are really what's hurting decks like Guardy. I've even seen. I know I've been playing on the ladder just to test out Guardy more and more as time goes on, just to keep myself fresh for playing in these cups, and I came up against a Gouging Fire, and I was not ready for the Delphox that was in there because you're trying to get your engine off the ground, and putting Manaphy down isn't necessarily priority number 1 in a lot of decks, and I know that Manaphy doesn't even save you against things like, again, a fully set up Dragapult deck. It doesn't save you against something that's got a chainable Sableye turn after turn where it's planting, those 12 damage counters on your Pokemon, and most of whom are pretty weak. And if you do it a couple times, it's game ending. So I would say that as far as that goes, I think that that's really what we're seeing here, is that Sableye is just got free reign on a lot of stuff. And Guardy is a really well-known deck in Japan. It's been played quite a bit. Not to say that Guardy does poorly. I still think it's up there with the top 8 decks, but I feel like people just don't want to take that chance in their best of one format, because now they're probably ramping up. So I do want to try one other link I'm going to send to you here, Dre. We're going to take a look at some future decks that they are building over in Japan. So let me get the link pulled up here. We're going to take a look at some gym winning battles, which are very similar to a league challenge. And this one's one from today that we're going to peep at together. I'm going to look at it for the first time. And if you don't know what this website is, it's pokecabook.com. So POKECABOOK.com. That's the Japanese website where I usually do my meta reads for the Japanese meta before it comes over here. But we'll take a look at this next page here, where we see the Luxray EX, which I'm super pumped about if it actually works as a deck. This won a challenge over there, or a gym battle. We've got the Palafin coming in here with the new Sneasler. Well, I love Sneasler. It's one of my favorite Pokemon. We've got that in here, and we see some of the newer Dark EX Pokemon in that list. We've got a new version of the Iron Valiant coming back, maybe. Shout out to Tyler Matthews. Maybe you'll get your chance again. And then we kind of go down to the more meta decks. We've got the Snorunt, Frostlass, Monkey Dory combo deck. We've got a Miraidon, and then we hit Charizard EX, and that's kind of where I want to sit and talk a little bit, have a nice chat. Dad's gonna pull you in and have a heart-to-heart with you, because Charizard's back, baby. We're going to talk about Charizard. Look at all of the Charizard love. If I scroll down in this page, it's Charizard, Charizard, Charizard. When you're reading the Japanese meta, if you don't know, when you're looking at these lists here that are challenge winners, if you see a majority of them back to back, that's going to tell you that it's really good in the meta. If you see 1 or 2, that's a flash in the pan. But we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Charizards in a row at different store locations that are winning decks. Now, the big thing here is going to be that Dusknoir line that we've got, the 1/1/1. So not only can you plant damage counters now as Charizard, you're also ramping up your deck damage because you're knocking yourself out to do that. Then there's the Mochi that's going to ramp up your damage even more. And we're just doing big damage. We've got the Max Belt in some of these lists too. It's just going to be a crazy good deck. So that's the first deck that I think we'll kind of talk about into the Worlds meta. So Dre, what are your takes at first glance at some of these lists?
The reason why I'm playing Zard on the ladder is because I want to make sure my Arvin for Candy Sealstone skills stay sharp. I got to make sure I stay sharp on those, because, Charizard just looks disgusting going into Worlds. Like the Dusknoir, the whole line. Like, I drop 5 damage counters. That's cool. Fixes math. I'm hitting 230. Nope. Doing more than that, because you just took a prize card. So like, you're just ramping up so much damage, and if the meta is good enough where I need Max Belt, like, I'm just smacking everything. I don't have to be as passive. Like, they made Zard even more aggressive. Like, I can take an Oko on almost every basic V and EX that's in the game now. And if I'm turn 2 Candy Zarding and I can get a Pidgeot and you took a 1 prizer, I'm just going to counter catch her up. Or even if you didn't take a prize card, I can just blow up my Dusknoir and activate my own counter catcher.
Listen, I've said it once and I'll say it a million times. Pokemon TCG or TPCI, they love printing money. They printed so many Charizard cards, and then they said, oh, you know what? We'll print these cards. We'll let Charizard not be so good anymore. And then they said, wait, Worlds is coming up. Let's make Charizard great again. We need Charizard to win Worlds. we're going to make a ton of money because we have all these Charizard cards out there and people are going to want to complete their world stacks. Exactly. And here we go. Let's print some more Charizards because it probably
hopefully I'm one of those.
Yeah, there you go. You know, we want Dre to be one of the decks, and you can name it TSS Win Charizard on the deck box. But you know, as far as it goes, that's kind of where I'm at, where my head's at going into the Worlds format. We see some Regidrago V pop up.
Drago's doing good.
Drago's doing really good because now we have the Kyurem, or however you pronounce it, Kyurem.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Haxorus too.
And Haxorus, yeah. So we've got
Insta-kill Lugias.
Insta-kill Lugia in here. We're good to go. Gardenia's Vigor, I think that's a bad card, but we won't talk about that too much. Yeah, I do like Mela in the list, though. I see Mela in this last one, and I think that's great. We see a Tina V-Star instead of the Raging Bolt. I think that's a good choice. But I mean, I see pluses and minuses for both, for sure. You know, the I forget what it's called, Midnight Stretcher or the Night Stretcher, where you're getting to recover a Pokemon too, can be really, really good in this list. Scoop Up Cyclone, I'm seeing thrown in a couple of these lists too. I think that's great because, you know, if you're hitting with Goodra, not get knocked out, you scoop it up and you swing with another one. So I think that's great. And
pretty strong.
We go back to Guardy for Worlds format. We've got Hyper Aroma Guardy. We've got the new stadium for Guardy in here. That's kind of neat. But only a couple, right? Because obviously Charizard's very scary. We're gonna keep going back to Charizard's very scary, but we do see a couple of Gardevoirs still living. They're living their best life out here. We've got a fan favorite, United Wings. We've got United Wings coming back. It's got a grass attacker now. The world is great. You know, we could see that. We got a couple of those here. Could be a funny deck to see on stream. Probably not winning Worlds, but it's cute. You know, I like United Wings. Sorry, Josh and Alex. It's a cool deck, but I don't know if it's as cool as it was last season's NAIC. Then we see Dragapult, and that's it. It's a flash in the pan, right? Dragapult EX, Lost Zone box, not doing its thing. Then, again, you know, this is a sample size. This is one day, but we're looking at all of these stores in Japan. We've got a couple of Raging Bolt Ogerpons still chilling in here. We've got a couple of Chen Paos. We've got a Greninja. Then we got Lost Zone, Dialga, Goldengo. We got Goldango EX. Then we've got some ancient box stuff, a dark box deck. But again, if we're looking at the whole, the majority of decks that are on here, or the highest count, are either a Regidrago deck or a Charizard deck. And primarily it's Charizard. So that, you know, keeps swinging my mind that Charizard is most likely going to be the deck to beat. Can your deck beat it? Or is your deck just better in best of 3 than a Charizard deck is? So that's where, you know, I keep scrolling back and forth through all these decks, trying to put the puzzle together. Dre, are there any decks that stand out to you that you think, okay, maybe this lives in a Charizard world a little bit better?
I mean, I'm actually kind of interested in Dialga.
Okay.
But I just feel like the only thing that was Dialga was good is that Zard had bad numbers, and now with the Dusclops, it fixes a lot of those numbers now. So I'm not sure. Like, it's interesting to see Dialga, but like,
hey, they can't knock themselves out for damage counters on Dusclops or Dusknoir if you're taking an extra turn, right? Like, that's you know, I can see your point. I can even see potentially somebody cooking up a Dusknoir line in Dialga. I think that would be kind of funny to do something like that, because then you're ramping your damage even more. You're swinging for not just 220 anymore, and then yoga looping or timeless GXing, if you will, taking that extra turn. Then you are planting, I think it's 5 damage counters for the Dusclops, and then it's 13 damage counters if you get up to the Dusknoir. So if you're playing a rare candy, maybe you throw some Iridas in here so you can search out your rare candies and your Greninja a little bit easier, or even Arvins too, because there was the build of Dialga that was playing the TM Evo,
Right.
There's obviously ways of getting your rare candy out and finding your other pieces, because you are drawing a lot of cards. For research is pretty much the staple. Andrew Hedrick, another great build of his, had the conversion of the research that you don't see in a lot of decks. So that's one for me. I would say Tina still kind of lives in this format a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say Lost Zone Tina might have a comeback for Worlds if you are playing a really, really fine or defined list and you test it against Charizard time and time again. I'm sure it's pretty hard to get that to pop off because they're blowing up your Comfies. They're blowing up two Comfies and then swinging into your Tina at the same time. So if you can, get around that, maybe you're playing Bravery Charms on all of your Comfies. Who knows? But I mean, it is a pipe dream, but Tina's got Iron Leafs that can come back into Charizard too. It's got Freddy Fazbear. We've got the Blood Moon Ursaluna that can just pop up in here and do its thing. So it's a lot of things to think about going into the Worlds meta. So if you are playing in the Worlds format, or maybe your stores aren't having cups until after Worlds because you want to, give players time to get back to start their next Worlds journey, it's something to keep your eye on and maybe start testing these decks now. That way you're ready for the World Championship. Or beyond for the new season. So Dre, any other final thoughts on some of the Worlds decks here? Anything else that you're interested to see or cards you're excited about seeing?
It's kind of disappointing not seeing any of like the dark legendaries that deck, like the ones that are like that all seem like they would work together, the Petulant and all on all them, the Okidogi and all of them. So it's looking like that deck is probably going to be a flop, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
The cards do seem to be very strong in other decks, which is good, which means if I get one of those alt arts, at least I can throw it in a deck. I was just looking forward to playing them all together. They look kind of cool. It's just really hard to see past just how obnoxiously good Charizard seems to get. Like with the Dusknoir line, it just seems like we're back into just Czar's world. And but even these Japanese lists, I look at a few of them, I'm not sure I'm sold on some of the counts. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be some Western players that toy around and we bring like a pretty refined Charizard list, I think. And we just reestablish the correct way to play Zard. So I mean, if you don't have Zards, go get them. If you don't know how to play Zard, you should probably play it just in case it's you decide to fall back on it. But I think we're just back to it being a Zardy boy world.
That's right. So, hey, if you've got anything out of this and you're playing towards your next invite for future tournaments in your local area, definitely something that you're going to want to consider. For sure. So what I'm going to do, we're going to end everything here for you, but we do want to give you a special shout out for watching the entire video because it definitely helps support us too. Watching these meta forecasts, hit the like button if you can, subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this, and share a video like this with your friends so they can learn more about the Pokemon TCG and what decks they should be playing for future meta. I'm going to let Dre do his shout outs here and where you can find Dre. Maybe you want some coaching from Dre too for Charizard into the Worlds format, but Dre, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Well, big shout out TSS, greatest team in the whole world. Shout out you, PJ, best manager.
Thank you.
All the homies on the team, Cal Connor, all of my guys in my testing group. I appreciate it. I know we have a lot of work to do, so I'm excited to get down to the grind. Shout out Candace. You can find me on Twitter, KingDreC1out, C1OUT. Metafy, I have opened my schedule. I am doing a bunch of coaching now. I have made the conversion to be a full-time content creator. So I'm going to be dropping YouTube videos. So keep an eye out for my YouTube videos dropping. I did drop a very informative Lost Zone box one, and I'll probably end up dropping a Guardian Zard one before Worlds happen. So, yep, hit me up for your coaching. Find me on Twitter, hit me on YouTube. Appreciate all you. Appreciate you, PJ.
Yeah, appreciate you too, Dre. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Metaphorcast. As always, we love having you. And if you love the Shuffle Squad, you're going to want to check out theshufflesquad.com, where you can check out amazing articles and accessories, whatnot. We've got everything on there for you. So stop over there again one more time. Check out all the links down below in the description, and leave us some love in the comments section of this video too. We will, this is a reveal here. I love giving reveals at the end of these things, but we will eventually convert this after the new season to also a podcast on all of the podcast streaming, just like we used to have the Shuffle Pod. So we will have it back on Spotify and Apple Music, so on and so forth.
Nice.
So we will have that Metaphorcast for you, not only in YouTube form, but also something that you can listen to on the drive. So we're really excited about that. Lots of awesome things to come in the new season for TSS. So you're going to want to stick around. But for now, we will catch you next time.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.